Good morning. Welcome to the CREST Network. I'm Dick Wagner, and hiding on the other side of the screen up in Georgia is Bill Giannone.
Good morning. How are you, Dick? Good
Good,
morning to everyone
good.
Thank you for joining us.
I see we've got a couple new people jumping on here. So, this segment, which we do every month on the fourth month or the fourth week of the month, fourth Tuesday, is a Q&A segment, and we we put together during the month and sometimes from previous months when there's more questions than we can address. We put together the questions that we're getting asked, and then Bill and I will attempt to answer those questions here live on the webinar. So we're going to, if I can get my monitor or my screen to move, we're going to jump to the very first question. I probably get this question 2 or 3 times a week. And the question is, what's the deal? What's up with business blogging? Marketers and salespeople and business owners are hearing more and more and more about business blogging. And so they're asking, what's up with it? Why should we even do it? And then a lot of times they'll add, I've looked into it and it's a whole ton of work that I don't think I'm quite ready for. And so I'm going to answer it like this. I'm not going to be as worried about the comments that people have said, oh my gosh, this is an awful lot of work, or comments like, I'm not a writer. How can I possibly create something, a blog, and much less a blog once a week or a blog every other week? I can't possibly do that. It's too much. I'm not a good writer. I I can sit there and sit there at the computer screen for an hour and I can't even think of anything to write about. And very very fortunately, both Bill and I are really pretty good at coming up with topics and then sitting down and writing that 5 or 6 or 700 word blog article. And so let's just start with that. Blogging, especially business blogging, doesn't have to be 5 or 6 or 700 words. It can be much more often and much shorter text. You can have 100 words or 200 words, and they're more short blurbs or short thoughts about what's on your mind, and those can go up almost on a daily basis if you want. Some people actually blog hourly or as the motive or the motivation or the thought comes to them. But one of the things that business blogging does, when you have a blog site or an area on your website to hold blog articles, is that it helps your business compete. Because, and the easiest way for you to see how important it is to Google one at a time the top 10 disaster restoration companies in your own market, and look on their heading, look at the top of their page when the website loads, look for the word blog. Almost all of them, I'm going to say 70%, have a blog site. So that tells you that many of your competitors are already doing that. The reason why blogging works and the reason why people should be doing blogging is because it creates a topic, a title, a message that can be found by those people searching on Google or Yahoo or Edge or Bing. They can search the keyword protect my home this winter. And if your blog article happens to include text in it, or even the topic, the main heading says protect my home this winter, Google's going to find it and pop it up, bring it up so that whoever's searching for it can find it. Or my house is flooded. Great, very popular kind of topic. What it does is the whole concept of a blog or a blog article is that it brings your customers and your prospects and your clients to your website. And the whole point of having a website is to get people to come and see it and read it and be comfortable with it and be comfortable with you, feeling that you have credibility and you have integrity. Another advantage to blogging is that it dramatically ramps up your search engine optimization. It's referred to as SEO, and that's very, very important. The better you are with your blog articles, and the more Google feels that you have a relevant website without even buying position number 1, 2, or 3, you can organically land in that position and you don't have to pay a dime to do it. One other area of business blogging that's really good for marketers is that when a marketer, even those that say they're not particularly good at grammar and spelling and writing, hey, you know what? Grammar, spelling, and all of that, punctuation, there's software in Microsoft Word that does that for you. So you can write a short article and it can sound pretty good even if you're not real good at it. So it helps you with your own level of confidence and your own expertise. I could go on. There's a lot more to discuss. If you want to talk about business blogging and how you should do it, why you should do it, how to do it fairly easily for yourself, even when you're not a writer, just send me a text or email me and we'll schedule a few minutes to talk about it. Billy, it's all yours.
Gotcha, Dick. Thanks. That was really good information. Is anyone on those Facebook restoration pages telling the truth? You know, we read them a lot. Many of us are Facebook addicts, so to speak, and we've heard for years about the different pages. You know, you've heard of pages like Restoration Rebel or NORP. They started out as just little Facebook pages of small kind of street level groups that have morphed into thousands and thousands of followers with dozens, if not 100 different posts a day. And many times those posts are from, let's just call it newbies in the business who are looking for real good guidance and information. Sometimes those posts are from trollers who are looking to get information from people that they can then refute. And sometimes that information comes directly from people who are looking to market their services, but doing it through a backdoor way. Let me give you an example of the latter. Somebody will sit there and say, is there anybody out there who can help with search engine optimization? Well, when you do a little back research and you find out the guy asking the question actually runs his own SEO company and he's just looking to put it out there so then he could turn around and say, well, if anybody's interested, I'm the guy. You know, I think Dick will tell you that's probably not the most effective way of marketing, even though people will try kind of any trick. The ones I want to address today are the ones where people are genuinely asking questions about maybe some production type questions, how to effectively dry a certain type of floor, or whether or not certain engineered woods or LVTs can be dried, or how to effectively dry tile, or does that have to all be removed? Those kinds of questions are the ones I'm talking about. You always have to be careful who's giving the answers. You could sit there and you can read 20 responses, and all 20 responses will be different. The first thing it tells you is that, yes, there are many different ways to skin a cat in our industry, and there are different attitudes and approaches that we can take. You have to be careful as to whose opinions or decisions you're giving more credibility to than others. There's something that's called confirmation bias that exists out in the world. Happens all the time when we select certain news stations or websites that we frequent. Many times we're going to websites or watching news that lines up with our own political or social beliefs. They call that confirmation bias. We only want to be told things that we already believe because it makes us feel better in our own belief system. So many times, if we don't really understand the true answer to the question, we will slant ourselves towards wanting to believe the guy who says the things that we already believe. That doesn't really help us if we don't truly have the knowledge and understanding. So my advice would be, make sure you do a little bit of research on the people answering the questions. There were many administrators over the years in those two groups who, believe it or not, had less than 2 years of experience in our industry. They just happened to be really good bloggers. They were active. They probably didn't do a lot of business, so they had all day to sit around and look at Facebook and be answering pages and become very frequent contributors. That didn't make their answers any more valuable to the guy who's questioning. You have to find the people who really, really have knowledge. Do research on certain names. The best answer I can tell you is believe half of everything you read, because it's really not a place. It's kind of like Wikipedia. It's not a place where we're getting facts. It's a place where we're getting opinion disguised as fact. So always make sure that you do some research on the sources. You could easily on Facebook just click on their name, and most people have enough of a public profile available where you can get an idea as to at least what company they own or they're working with. Then you can Google that answer. You can Google that company, take a look and see how long they've been in business. You can do an about us on their Facebook pages, and you can check out their websites. Those are the kinds of things I recommend. Don't take it at face value. I've seen too many times, especially on the technician side, where some technicians have gone on that page and they've seen something that looks really great, and it ends up taking them and their company down a rabbit hole because it's really not great advice. Yes, it is possible to dry certain things in place, but if it takes you 14 days rather than ripping it out and replacing it in 3 days, that's clearly a route that every single person is going to choose, especially on commercial projects. So let's be smart about certain things and understand that because something can be done, it doesn't mean it should be done. And when I talk about telling the truth, let's make sure that we're assessing very fairly someone's ability to give us an opinion that we should value. Thanks, Dick.
Thank you. This has been a hot topic. I've probably been asked this every few days for the past several months, considering that our world and certainly our marketing world has been dealing with a new challenge or roadblock, and that is the COVID-19 issue. It has changed the way business conducts business. It changed, and a perfect example, I haven't been in a Target store or a Publix grocery store or a Walmart in 6 months. I used to go every Sunday morning with my wife. I just have no desire because of all of the rules and restrictions and regulations and perceptions. And that same concept carries over to calling on a plumbing company or calling on a roofing company or a carpet cleaning service or an insurance agency. And so we created, and it's on the CREST website, uh, a list of, for lack of a better term, a checklist or a to-do list of things that marketers can do, since face-to-face marketing is somewhat limited. Some of our clients across the country are almost on complete lockdown. Some are on a limited situation of, okay, you can go out and about, but you have to wear a mask. And because of that, many insurance agents or agencies are keeping their doors locked. They might be working inside and maybe even with a mask, but they're keeping their doors not locked, not allowing marketers or others to come in and out the way they used to. So it means that we've had to shift. Marketers that were great at face to face have now had to shift and do some more distance marketing, more marketing via phone, email, text, and by the way, blogging is a wonderful way to engage your clients, because once the blog article is up on your website, you can copy and paste that link into the email or even a text and send it out to your clients so that they can click on it and go to your website. It's a great way to enhance the visibility of your website. But coming back around to very specifics, phone calls, emails, texts are going to be important. And I have had many people say to me, and not just in the past 6 months, but for the past 10 years, I hate phone calling. I hate phone calling when people call me to solicit their services. So I most definitely hate phone calling when I have to do it and solicit my services. And therein lies the problem. You should not be calling your prospects and your clients to solicit your services. It should be much more subtle and much softer than that. It should be less salesy than that. I know marketers who are really good at sending out a text to one of their clients that just simply says, "Hey, what's up? How you doing? Anything new happening?" And that's a very non-salesy, soft way to bring that person back to top of mind. The whole role, the whole function of marketing is to create a top of mind presence. Pretty easy to do when you walk into an office and you talk to them face to face. But that should be the goal in sending out an email, sending out a text, and even making a phone call to them. Your phone calls, at a bare minimum, where possible, should be trying to get an appointment. Your phone call should never be about trying to sell them something. Ideally, the phone call is to speak about some of their pains, use the language that matters to them, which builds your credibility. And so it's not hard to have a conversation, a face-to-face, or excuse me, a phone-to-phone conversation when you're just simply mentioning an elevator speech. I was looking at a daily activity report this morning. It came from one of my clients that said that the insurance agent commented that they were so surprised that the marketer mentioned client retention because number one, the agent said nobody ever talks about that. And number two, the agent said, oh my gosh, you get it. You understand because you know about client retention, because that is obviously one of the pains that an insurance agent deals with. Another failure of marketers in engaging in the social media posts, whether that's Facebook or Twitter or what have you, is, and I see this literally every single day on Facebook or Twitter, is in my feed, there might be 10, 15, 20, 50 different posts from restoration contractors or roofers or plumbers that they're marketing their business. They're trying to sell something. They're saying something like, "It's raining out. OMG, if your house is flooded, be sure to call XYZ Restoration. We can help you and get your home dry. Call 1-800-123 whatever." So be very, very careful about that. There are lots of ways to market and market effectively rather than face to face. I've had the conversations with some of the marketers. I welcome having those conversations with anybody that would like to chat about it. Billy?
Thanks, Dick. How can I make my invoices larger without drawing a lot of attention? The attention is the part that's the most important thing for us to be focusing on here. There are always ways to make your invoices larger, most of which will involve just simply inflating things that you do on the job, billing for work that you haven't really executed, or changing your price list to make it out of the norm in your area. Those three things are things I would not recommend at all. Number one, because they're very unethical. And if we're going to operate our business, the first and foremost thing we should always be doing is operating a fair and equitable business. We want to make sure that we're ethical in everything we do. So we're going to eliminate the original ideas of adding things on that we don't do, doing superfluous things, or jacking up our prices way out of range. So let's talk about the realistic things we can do. First thing we can do, we can follow the S500 to the letter of the law. Okay. I don't know how many of you guys, and it's happening quite a bit because I'm getting more and more from our members. I'm getting more and more questions and inquiries about assisting them in responding to third parties, these third-party review companies or these peer review companies that are out there. A lot of them are taking our invoices and they're trying to chop them up. And the tool that they are using right now is the S500. Believe it or not, most of us do not do our work in full compliance with the S500, even though we consider ourselves to be the experts, and we call those on the other side the know-nothings. They are looking at uses of our different pieces of equipment and our decisions on what class or category to call our losses, and they're questioning that based on the language of the S500. So the first and simplest way we can increase our invoices is to make sure we're fully versed in the S500 language, understand what it means for a practical daily application, and make sure we're using it. Best case in point on that is our use of equipment. 90% of restorers do not put enough equipment on a project. I'll repeat that. 90% of restorers do not put enough equipment on the project. And I don't mean enough because you want to fill up the room. I mean enough according to the standard of the IRCRC. You know, a lot of guys who have been in the industry for some time got trained years and years ago. Well, the calculations for air movers, for instance, changed drastically in the last revision of the S500. It used to be a linear footage of wall space, and now it's a square footage of room with a whole bunch of caveats in there. Let me just suffice it to say that I can almost promise you that each and every one of you are leaving off between 1 and 4 air movers on every single project. Believe it or not, if you just added that 1 air mover on every single project, if you're a normal sized company doing 15 or 20 losses a month, you absolutely are going to be able to make enough money off that 1 air mover to pay for a technician for an entire year. That's a real simple way to get your invoice up. The other things in the S500 have to do with the level of demolition you want to do, how you're going to attempt to dry things, your use of air scrubbers as negative air machines, making sure you're filtering the air properly. Those are the kinds of things we have to make sure we're doing. We also have to make sure we're addressing our own costs for operating our company versus what Xactimate's allowing us. Yes, it becomes more difficult if we change our price from the Xactimate price on a normal residential loss to a different price list. It becomes more difficult. A lot of times these companies just simply say, we're only paying the Xactimate pricing. But you have forceful arguments to make if you can prove to them that you're paying your technicians higher than what Xactimate's allowing, and you're providing them with more benefits. Yeah, you don't want to open up your books to them, but you want to be clear that you have a higher cost of doing business. You could be leaving money on the table because Xactimate's only allowing you a certain amount of money for that technician, and you may in fact be paying more than that amount. There is a way in Xactimate to drill down and find out exactly what the hourly wage is that's incorporated within that rate. For instance, if you're at a, let's call it a $45 level for your restoration technician. Some areas are a lot more, some areas are a little bit less. But let's just say you're at a $45 level. They're not allowing $45 as the salary for that technician. And they're not saying, oh, we're just giving you a bunch of extra money. They're actually making a detailed calculation of what that hourly wage is. And that hourly wage for a $45 technician is under $20 an hour. The additional funds that are built in there go towards your payroll taxes, your burdens, any kind of insurances you have to have on your workers, any benefits you're providing to those workers. And then it also includes the support staff in your office directly related to having employees. So if you need people to do payroll, you have a payroll service, it covers those costs as well. If you have somebody who is documenting the hours and keeping track of it to help the bookkeeper out, it pays for those hours. It's all the support and the indirect costs associated with the labor itself. Okay, understand that, because if you're paying somebody $22, $23 an hour to be a high-level technician and you're only getting 45, don't sit there and say, well, they're giving me, 50% more than what I need. No, they're really not, because when you factor all those other costs in, you're actually getting underpaid. So you need to make that change in calculation. Those are the things I want to make sure you're aware of. Finally, make sure you understand exactly what your guys are doing out in the field and make sure you're writing for what they're doing. That's the last piece. When you create your invoice, again, most of us on the residential side do Xactimate. If you're doing it in Xactimate and your guys are, cutting out the drywall and then putting it in garbage bags, make sure the line item you're using is the and bag for disposal line item. I can't tell you how many members we have. When I start analyzing their processes, one of the first things I'll do is I'll go backwards and I'll start at the invoice, and I'll realize that they're not really invoicing for what they're doing out in the field. It might not be a terrible idea to have the person creating your invoices go out on the job site and write down for themselves everything they see, because maybe it's not getting translated from the project managers or the technicians over to the person who's either your estimator or whoever's creating your final invoices for you. Maybe all that detail is not getting translated. Make sure you have somebody there who's doing that for you. That's a very important piece of the puzzle. Thanks, Dick.
Thank you. Personal branding. Everybody's talking about it. The questions are constantly coming up. How can I do personal branding? It comes up in every class we teach. It's been coming up for years. And personal branding is one of the two core key components of my marketing training program that I have had for 10 or 11, 12 years. Personal branding is vital to an incredible level of success. If you, as a marketer, want to be an ultra high performer in your field, this is an area where you should really focus on and pay real close attention. Personal branding, it encompasses a lot of different things, but it's sort of an ongoing process of developing and maintaining a reputation so that those within your organization, those within your circle of influence, your clients, your prospects, your customers, all see you in a very unique light that is easy to remember. Your personal brand is a way that you promote yourself. And a lot of us aren't real good at promoting our own selves. We can promote others, but many of us aren't real great at actual self promotion. When you get really good at personal branding, it solves that issue for you. Personal branding can include those signature stories, those short stories that you tell all your new prospects. And that helps establish who you are. Personal branding can go back to, and it's going back a few slides, back to the blogging concept. When you post good content on a blog or on your Facebook posts or on your tweets, that can enhance, elevate your personal branding. But let's just go down through a real quick checklist of some of the things that need to be considered. In developing a personal brand, you need to consider how your own brand will make other people feel. It should be about what makes you different. It should be able to highlight the things that are you're really good at, your key skill sets. It should also include what your message is. What do you want to say over and over and over to your prospects and your clients? Your personal brand should be designed and focused on speaking to those that are your ideal client or prospect. The better your personal brand is, the more influential you are. Personal branding is about creating your own personal niche. It's not the niche that all of the marketers in your office or all of the marketers in the community have. It's your own specific personal niche that makes you very special, very unique, and dare I say it, different. Personal branding and differentiation are two of the main cores that I pound the drum on in every single marketing class. And then I talked about what your niche is, but more importantly is, are you an authority within your niche? Do you know more about your niche than anybody else that could even mention it or talk about it? That's in a nutshell what personal branding is. I'm going to give you one example that's very vivid. It's very visual, and it was highly effective. I taught a marketer years ago who was extremely bubbly and energetic and enthusiastic, and it's like, oh my gosh, don't you ever settle down? Are you always this wired? And her boss said, yep, that's the way she is all the time. She is just bubbly. And so we came up with the idea, and this is again a very visual, graphic way to help enhance your personal branding. We suggested that she go to Sam's Club or BJ's or Costco and buy a giant tub, a 2-gallon tub of individually wrapped bubble gum. And she carry a pocket full of bubble gum with her wherever she went. And whenever she was ready to leave, she should lay a wrapped piece of bubble gum on every plumber's desk or on every insurance agent's desk, or hand that bubble gum to every plumber technician that she came in contact with. She started doing this, and within a few weeks, she was known as the bubblegum girl. It was part of her personal branding shtick. It's really, really stuck. And to this day, I'm going to say 5 or 6, 7 years later, she's still known as the bubblegum girl. She's out of Toledo, Ohio. And so I'm in communication periodically with her. I can give you a dozen more examples, and some of you have heard them, but that's just one simple example of how you can really create a personal brand just with something as simple as bubblegum. Billy?
Thank you, Dick. Everyone wants time off around the holidays. How do I manage that? This is an issue that happens year after year after year. And unfortunately, the problem starts probably around June or July. And we never realize it until we get close to Thanksgiving. And between Thanksgiving and New Year's, we've got 6 weeks in which there's a holiday. And it's very, very difficult to try to plan while you're in the middle of it for fair and equitable time off for everyone, to allow them to spend a little bit of time with their families, but also ensuring that your company doesn't suffer irreparable harm should there be, a call that comes in. For the actual holiday days themselves, normally most companies will close on Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year. Doesn't mean that there's not going to be work to be done. There are always on-call situations that arise, and however you handle those on any weekend should be how you handle them for the holiday as well. I would have loved to have had this conversation back in August with all of you guys, but we're going to talk about it as a stopgap measure for now, and then we're going to discuss what we can do next year with a little reminder that we're going to throw in our calendars around August of next year. How we're going to handle it now is the first thing we're going to make sure is that if we have one crew, we're going to make sure that we're very, very sensitive to overworking them on the holiday days themselves. We're going to do anything in our power that if we have a project going on, to make sure that we're going to alert the client that we are not going to be there on those major holidays. We want to be able to make sure that as best as we can, we reserve that time for our staff to be with their families. Now, the time around it, given the fact that Thanksgiving's always on a Thursday, there's always that Friday afterwards, and that causes issues with people because they want to have the long weekend. That presents a problem for us if we have projects that are going on prior to that, or if a phone call comes in. So we want to make sure that we address that. If you give your company Friday off, then it's not a problem. Again, it's just an emergency situation. But you need to understand, If you have only one person, let's not overwork them too much. Let's be sensitive. Now, for those of you who have 2 or more crews, it's really vital to understand the rotations. You can't put the same people on rotation to be on call for all of these holiday situations. For instance, when you go from Thanksgiving into Christmas, they are 4 weeks apart. So when they're 4 weeks apart, you have to be careful that if you're using an every other week rotation, the Thanksgiving person might be on at the same time as the Christmas person, or if you're using a staggered rotation, or if you're using a weekend rotation, understand that if Friday is part of your weekend rotation, that Christmas and New Year's always both fall on the same day of the week, this year being a Friday. Be sensitive to the fact that you'll have somebody working 2 major holidays at the same time. So work it out amongst your staff right now. The best rule of thumb I can tell you is work backwards from the Christmas holiday and have a little sensitivity to staff members who have little children. And if you can allow them to be the ones not on call for Christmas, and then they can jump in on the, let's call it the New Year's, where you might have guys who are single, and even though it's COVID, they still might partake a little bit on the New Year's Eve celebrations, where they wouldn't be in the best shape to respond on New Year's Day. These are all practical thoughts that we have to be thinking about as owners. So try to work the rotation out if you can for the December and January holidays to fit that way. You know, see if one guy will be able to bite the bullet and say, I'll be on call because I don't really have kids and Christmas isn't as big of a deal for me as it might be for someone with a 5 or a 6-year-old. Conversely, the single guys might want to go out and party a little bit more, whereas the dad of the 5 or 6-year-old, there's a good chance he might be asleep by midnight on New Year's Eve. So let's work those mindsets out and let's try to figure that out. Finally, let's talk about what we're going to do next year. Next August, the best thing to do is to make sure that we tell our staffs that they have to have all holiday time off requests in by the 1st of September. You'd like to have it in by Labor Day. The reason is this: a lot of guys save their time off until the end of the year, and then they put you in a catch-22. They want to take a whole week off between Christmas and New Year. You know that really puts you at a really bad spot, because in some areas of the country, it gets cold and it gets pretty busy. There could be a lot of work that could be done, and now you're understaffed. But if you allow them to hold those days and you never have a conversation with them prior to the end of November, say, and they turn around and say, well, I'm taking off because I have a week left, you've put yourself in a really bad catch-22 spot there. So let's have that conversation. Make sure they put in for all their time off by Labor Day. Then you've got 3 or 4 months to figure out what to do with them and to work an equitable schedule out so that it's fair for them, but also fair for you as an owner. Thanks, Dick.
Thanks, Billy. Does anyone actually do cold calls anymore? Yes, they do. Actually, more now than they did a year or so ago. And I'm going to really mostly focus on cold phone calling, because most of our marketing world does fairly consistent cold visiting, where they've never been to the plumber, they've never been to that agent's office, they've never been to that carpet cleaning company or that industrial hygienist office. And so we're going to focus on cold phone calling. There are some do's and there are some don'ts. I want to address the don'ts, the things you should not do first. When you write out a script, or when you ask me to help you create a script, the absolute number one thing you should never do is read the script. All of us have had some solicitor call us on the phone and say, hi, my name is fill in blank, Bob. We don't want that. You cannot sound like you're reading a script. So here's the hard part. So that you don't read the script and sound artificial, you have to memorize it. And it's okay to memorize it, inserting your own inflection, your own tone, your own words, your own style into it, as long as the substance of the conversation remains the same. Everybody should have an elevator pitch, an elevator speech, a 2, 3, 4 sentence blurb that is memorized. But here's the fatal mistake that so many marketers make. They use the same elevator speech or elevator pitch with the receptionist answering the phone as they do with the insurance agent that they want to ultimately talk with. The elevator speech should be about what trips the trigger of that person that you're on the phone with. Well, most customer service reps at an insurance agent's office, their number one priority is not client retention. So to use an elevator pitch or speech that incorporates client retention into it isn't going to work well for the customer service rep answering the phone, that receptionist. So you need to have different scripts for different kinds of people that you're talking to on the phone. And then an awful lot of people make the mistake of not properly introducing themselves. You can't just call somebody up and just barrel right into your sales pitch or your elevator pitch, or even trying to get in touch with someone else in the office without clearly saying your name and the company you're with, even the reason why you're calling. I've had marketers that said, well, geez, the minute I tell them I'm with XYZ Restoration, they'll know what it's all about and they'll just, put up the roadblock and they won't let me get to who I need to get to. There are scripts, surprising, but there are scripts. We actually have some that enable you to refute or answer the customer or the CSR or the receptionist addressing that when they try to put up that roadblock. A couple quick things that you should be doing prior to making the phone call. You should have, ideally even written down, what you hope to accomplish on that phone call. What's the reason for the call? What's your goal? What do you want to accomplish? Do you want to actually talk with an insurance agent? Do you want to set up an appointment to go visit them? Do you want to arrange for delivering lunch to them? Do you want to get them to invite you in for a lunch and learn, a continuing ed class? Know what your goal is in making that phone call before you actually make it. The next thing is, in the process of having that phone call, and part of making that phone call is, in most cases, it should be about setting an appointment. Sometimes it's setting an appointment via phone where you're going to actually call them back at a set time and day and have a more lengthy phone conversation where you can share some of the things that you know about agencies and their pains. But often cold calling isn't about selling something, it's about setting an appointment. You need to know their pains. You need to know what are the issues that a plumber deals with. What are the issues that a carpet cleaning company deals with? Every carpet cleaning company knows about callbacks. They know about a stain in the carpet that resurfaced, that popped up again after the carpet dried. And the homeowner wants to call them back because they didn't clean it properly. At least that's what the homeowner thinks. So ideally, you need to know their pains. Traditionally, carpet cleaners will have a series of a few pains they deal with every day. Insurance agents have a few pains. Plumbers have a few pains. Each of them are different, but they all deal with those kinds of things very regularly. The more you know about them and can talk about them, the higher your credibility, the more likely that your prospect will spend time with you on the phone. Last but not least, a cold phone call is an intrusion. You're interrupting them. They were focused on something, and they certainly weren't focused on staring at the phone, hoping a marketer would call. So keep in mind that you are intruding on somebody's time, and keep your presentation, your interaction, your elevator pitch short, and get right to the point of what your written goal is that you're trying to achieve with that person. But even though you're focused on not taking up a lot of their time, don't run through the conversation so fast that they don't even know who you are and what you said. Please don't do that. Don't get so nervous and so anxious that you just babble through so fast that they have no clue what you're talking about. Back to you, Bill.
Thanks, Dick. You scared me a second talking so fast like that. I've got so much I want to change in 2021. Where should I start? There's no perfect answer for this, but we do have to start, and sometimes over-analysis causes paralysis. So we can't just sit there with a list of 10 things and then come March, we haven't started any of them. For me, since I'm a finance and bottom line person, I always like to start at the bottom line, because the bottom line usually gives you a lot of information and analysis abilities to look at other issues and other problems. So when I say I want to start with the bottom line, I'd love to analyze our numbers. I'd love to look at any changes we could possibly make within our accounting, within our P&L. If we are not breaking out our revenue specifically by the types of business we're doing, we really don't have a good viewpoint as to the success or failure of our marketing teams or our production teams, or the profitability of their work. There could be some hidden things we need to find out, but without the proper analysis, we're never going to know if our marketers are doing a really good job at selling our services. We're never going to know if our PMs are doing a really good job of making sure that the crews are working fast enough. We can assume all we want, but until we have the numbers, we're not going to know. There are many CREST clients who over the last couple of years have been able to successfully break out the revenue sources so that it says water damage revenue, or fire damage, or cleaning, or mold, or even repairs if you're a full service company. It's really important. It's not good enough to just say, well, we took in $3 million this year. Where you take it in is very important. One of our CREST members I've been working with for a while on the financial side, they had a year where 2 years ago, they had a really good year, but their blend of business was not what they wanted it to be. So because we were tracking that, we knew that the revenue was good, but it wasn't coming from the areas that were going to generate a lot of income and profit. So what we did is we made sure that we concentrated our marketing efforts more towards the areas where we wanted to get the greater profitable jobs, which is, for most of us, water damage. Well, this year that company is going to do about the same as they did 2 years ago, but they have, believe it or not, tripled their profit, because instead of focusing on smaller margin work that might have been big ticket, they're focusing on the higher margin work that you might have to do a little bit more of, but it's higher margin. And that only happened because we were able to see where the revenue was coming from and then make those changes to the marketing and production efforts. So that's what I always say. If we're not really doing a great job with our numbers, we need to make sure we focus on getting our numbers really square and trying to break them down as best we can, because they will help identify a lot of other issues. In terms of having wish lists for change, so funny, Dick Wagner and I were together last week. We had our little end of year couple of day meeting for the CREST network to just make sure that we're both on the same page as we get into the new year, which I recommend all of you guys do with your teams as well. But we had our meetings, and one of the things we were discussing is that I had been to a seminar a little while back, and I may have even spoken about a little parts of it with you guys. But one of the things that really caught my mind is that there was a speaker there, and he was a really, really, really good motivational coach for business owners. And he made the statement that if business owners concentrate on one or two things to get done for the year, they will get both of those things done. If they try to get 5 or 6 things done for the year, they're only going to get 1 or 2 things done. And if they try to get a dozen things done for the year, they're going to get none. And that was, again, statistically generated by his thousands of clients that his company ran. The point of it was, don't overwhelm yourself with a huge wish list of things you want to change. Put 2 or 3 major things on your list that you want to accomplish, and tackle those 2 or 3 major things. Thanks, Dick.
Thank you, Billy. I'm going to address this question and move fairly fast. We're coming up on 55 minutes or so, and I want to wrap through this. But the question, are there any new social media platforms that are good for my business? Probably the easiest way to answer that is if the question was, are there any new social media platforms? With a period. The question is, that are good for my business. That's a very subjective, it's very difficult to say which specific social media platform or platforms are best for your business. But I'm going to hit on just a couple that aren't talked about much. A couple of them are pretty new. One is Gab, G-A-B, Gab. It's kind of the competitor, and a long ways to go, certainly, but trying to be the competitor of Facebook. Now, we all know that Facebook has 2 billion, that's 2 billion with a B, members, and Gab only has 4 million. But when you think about it, 4 million is also a lot. And so you can do the same kinds of things, or many of the same kinds of things, on Gab that you do on social media or on Facebook. Why would you go there? In part because although there's not as many members, not as much activity, you stand out really boldly because the website, that platform, has not been embraced and used as much. So yes, less people using it, but you stand out more. The other one is Parler, which is kind of the competitor, or attempt to be the competitor, to Twitter. Parler is, instead of sending out a tweet on Twitter, you send out a parley on Parler, P-A-R-L-E-R. And interestingly enough, Parler only started maybe 5-6 months ago. and they already have 8 million members, according to one research study that I recently did. Another one is a platform called Nextdoor, Nextdoor. And it's, I guess, kind of like where communities can come together, neighborhoods, if you will. They can exchange recommendations. They can talk about the local latest news in their community or their neighborhood. And it's where neighbors can talk about and build up and support local businesses. And again, uh, it's relatively new. You can go in and create, if there isn't one, you can create a neighborhood or a next door group around your office or around your home or uh, some other community arrangement. And by the way, they have 27 million active members. So that's something to consider. Quora, Quora. Don't hear about it much. Um, it's a place to give answers to and provide information about your company's services. By the way, Quora has 300 million users. And let's take it one step further. Pinterest, Pinterest, Pinterest. It's pinning things of interest to corkboards, except these are virtual corkboards. And I use it in the Ask Dick Wagner side. You can go to Pinterest and search Ask Dick Wagner, and you'll see that I have 12 or 1300 monthly followers. There are 322 million people using Pinterest. Why would you use it? Because Pinterest is an incredible visual, photos, graphics, memes, and video repository. And you can create your own names of your own boards. And I mean, I've proven that it works periodically, maybe once a month. I'll get an interaction from somebody from one of my Pinterest boards. And last but not least, this isn't new. This has been around roughly 10 years, but it's called LinkedIn. To this day, working with marketers, I continue to be shocked how many people don't have an active, up-to-date LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn isn't for your company. LinkedIn is for you personally. And you need to have a complete, elaborate profile on LinkedIn. And why should you? Because almost anybody, any client or prospect that you engage with, at the point where they learn your first and last name and or the company you're with, they're going to Google you. You know they are. And your LinkedIn profile, if it's full and complete, is going to pop up. And it better say some really good stuff on that LinkedIn profile. And because I've given you the number of members or active people monthly on all of the other websites, LinkedIn has 760 million active users. If those aren't enough reasons to consider some new social media platforms and get really good at some of the older ones, then I can't help you anymore.
Some great information, Dick. Thanks. I'm going to whip through this real quick. What is the biggest problem that other CREST members are facing in this environment? I get this a lot because Dick and I are once again, because we work specifically with your company, we don't like to share a lot of stories with other companies, but every once in a while we'll tell anecdotal tales. But this is a really good thing for all of you to know. You're all dealing with one thing that's very, very common, not only in our industry, but throughout the country right now, and that is staffing issues. It's very difficult right now for restorers to find good quality restoration professionals. They're getting gobbled up by the bigger companies, and they're getting paid a lot more money than we want to pay as independents in order to keep them on. It's also very difficult to find people who want to come into the industry because we have to basically overpay them to come into the industry right now based on the amount of money they can make by not working or by working in other fields. Depending on the area of the country you're in, you know, when companies like Amazon come in and they say that we're going to offer 30,000 jobs, Amazon pays a minimum of $15 an hour for someone who doesn't even know how to drive a forklift. So it's very difficult to take somebody in our industry who knows nothing and tell them, oh, I'll pay you $12 or $13 an hour to get you to learn the industry. We have to compete against whatever else is out there. Compound that now with the fact that our competitors are paying more and more because you may or may not know this, but a lot more of our industry is becoming much more consolidated and owned by larger companies, so they have deeper pockets. And they don't want to go through the time hassle of training somebody new. They'd rather go out and get somebody who has good experience and has skill sets. And they are okay with overpaying them, because if they think that job's worth $20 an hour, but they don't have to spend all that time and effort in training them and getting them up to that $20 an hour level, they can pay them $23 or $25, because from a number standpoint, it makes sense for them to get somebody experienced. So just understand, guys, number one problem everybody's dealing with, generally speaking, that's unique to nobody and common to everybody, is staffing issues. So if you feel like you can't get somebody to come in for an interview and you're having a tough time, just suck it up, deal with it, find out what you have to do to make things a little better. Go look for people that are good quality people. Always higher attitude. You can always train the best out of them, but you have to have good attitude to begin with. But know that you're not alone. Thanks, Dick.
Thank you. And we are wrapping up. Thank you so much. Dick Wagner here, and thank you, Bill. Hope this has been valuable. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dick. Bye, guys.